Hey everyone, we are going to be talking about all the cards that I'm keeping my eyes on for Tarkir Dragonstorm. Let's get into it. Okay, we're just talking rares and mythics today. I don't want to cover the uncommons, commons. There are some great ones in the set, but if I do go over the ones I want, we'll be here for hours, and even if they do spike up and I have to get them, they're only going to be like $6, so who cares? We're just going to be covering all the rares and the mythics. Some of these are already insane in terms of pre-release pricing, so it's just the cards that I'm interested in, whether it's for financial value or playing with or just I think are cool. I'm just going in set order, and we're just going to start things off. Ugin, Eye of the Storms, the legendary planeswalker Oogie Boy. When you cast this spell, exile one target permanent that's one or more colors, which is kind of what his downtick did on the old one. It was like a big wipe. This new Ugin has the Ugin has a second passive here, which basically every time you cast a colorless spell, you get to do it again, which is really great. So if you're doing stuff like eggs, or you're playing Eldrazi in Modern because everything is devoid and doesn't have color, basically it is a great way to just continually remove permanents from your opponent's battlefield. Also, it upticks to gain 3 life, draw a card, so if you have plenty of mana and you need more stuff to do to remove stuff, you can draw a card. If you got a full hand, you can just use the 0 ability and gain 3 mana, then cast the stuff in your hand. The downtick, it's a lot of words. It just says win the game, but you can read them if you'd like. Next up, we've got Elspeth Stormslayer. This is a pretty cool planeswalker that is basically a token doubler, and aside from being a token doubler, while typically we get this effect for 4 mana, for 1 more mana, you get the token doubling effect, and you also get a line of text that says win the game if you've already doubled all your tokens. So the neat thing about this is usually when you have one of these cards, all it does is make tokens. So if you have an empty board, or you're out of gas in your hand and you've already got a big board, they don't do anything. This one lets you actually just give everything flying and swing in for the win. So that's really cool. I do like a card that is much more versatile, and you can even downtick it to just remove a huge threat. This is an awesome card. I think it's going for a bunch of money already, but in terms of versatility to your token doubler, I think this does a lot of good work. The only downside is that it is a planeswalker, and your opponents can attack it. United Battlefront is up next. This is an homage to Collected Company. It's 4 mana, but notably it is sorcery speed, which is actually a huge downside and a downgrade when it comes to the Collected Company style effect. But it lets you look for 2 non-creature non-lands up to 3 mana value and put them right onto the battlefield, looking 7 deep, which is pretty great. So you'll typically hit the 2 things. I'm just going to keep an eye on this. There are plenty of better ways to do what this is trying to do, but specifically in Standard, we do end up getting a deck that has 2 non-creature non-land cards that are under 3 mana and win the game. This card will suddenly start seeing a ton of play. But until then, I'm just going to keep an eyeball on it. Next up, we've got Scavenger Regent. This is a dragon that's got one of those new Omen abilities. I really wish they put that on the other side so I could distinguish them from adventures, but c'est la vie. This one is a sorcery that lets you wipe all the non-dragons out, and basically it shuffles itself back into the deck, so you can just keep doing that as long as you draw it. Do I think you need this for Commander? No, I don't, unless you're in a dragon deck. This is a pretty cool thing. But in Standard, having a repeatable wipe that you can keep putting back in the deck, that's pretty neat. Plus, once you're done wiping and you've exhausted all of your opponent's resources, then you can just play this as a body that is decently hard to remove. It's got a little evasion, and yeah, it's pretty solid. After that, we've got the Sibsig Ceremony. This lets you cast creature spells for 2 less. Whenever a creature you control enters, if you cast it, destroy it, and you make a 2/2 zombie. So this is basically just a combo piece, and the number 1 place that I think is going to get seen is with the Acererak combo, where you basically, instead of going into the dungeon that he wants you to go in, instead you just go into that dark pool over and over and over again and just drain your opponent out of the game, because you just basically cast him and it costs nothing. And all you need is him, Relic of Legends, and the Sibsig Ceremony. This combo already existed in Modern with Heartless Summoning, filling in for the Sibsig Ceremony, but now you can do the whole combo in Pioneer. So it was a little too slow and kind of outdated in Modern, especially with MH3 coming out, but maybe it'll see a little play in Pioneer. It's a cool, really convoluted combo. Maybe it'll see some play in Pioneer. It's a dead format. I haven't been to Pioneer in a minute, so, maybe it's terrible. I don't know. Next up, we've got Cori-Steel Cutter. This is a really interesting little equipment. When you cast your second spell, you get to put it onto a token that it makes. It makes a little 1/1 monk with prowess, which is pretty great. Obviously, if you have to actually equip it to stuff, it's not as good, but it gives trample, which is pretty great. I really like that. It gives a lot of stuff you want in an aggro deck. It gives trample, it gives +1/+1, and it gives haste. So basically, you cast this, you cast something else like an Opt or whatever, and you get a 2/2 trample haster. Is that good enough? I don't know. Am I going to buy 4 of it to try? Yes, I am, because if it's remotely anything to do with prowess, I will try and jam it. I don't get to play prowess in Modern anymore. Pioneer wasn't that great either, but I've got a candle in my heart for Standard. Maybe I will just try and jam prowess in Standard, but I do think this card is very interesting. Obviously, it dodges a lot of creature removal in those kind of prowess style shells, so if you can just chain a couple spells, you can get a body back, which is sometimes where you struggle. Aside that, I think it's a neat, if you're doing a flurry thing in Commander, yeah, it's kind of a neat piece, but it's not game breaker or anything. It's just kind of neat. Next up, we've got Dracogenesis, and everyone is calling this card Omniscience at Home, and they're probably not wrong. There are some key differences here that I think we should know. It lets you cast dragons from anywhere, not just your hand. So Omniscience obviously is just everything is free from your hand. Dracogenesis means dragons everywhere are free, which is really interesting because there's a lot of spells in red that will impulse draw stuff, so you're exiling things, and now you can just play them for free off that. Escape to the Wilds, Jeska's Will, all that kind of stuff. Now you can just cast your dragons for free from exile. That's really nice. Biggest note, though, is that you can cast your commander for free. It doesn't get around commander tax. You still do have to pay commander tax, but it's a neat card. Is it going to win the game? No. I mean, if you have 8 mana and you're doing dragon stuff anyway, you're probably in a fine spot regardless. But if you want to Timmy the heck out, Dracogenesis is here for you. Next, we've got Magmatic Hellkite. I think this is a really interesting card. We've seen a couple of these guys in the last few standard sets. They're all 4 mana somethings that will ruin a non-basic. I think this is the best one yet. I think Sunspine Lynx was the most recent one. It prevented life gain. This one I really like, especially in a tempo game plan. You know, getting a little tempo-y. Maybe it's a little better in aggro, which is kind of where you want this. 4 mana may be a little too much, but it does have flying, which is really nice because you do get evasion. The notable part of this is that when it destroys a non-basic, it actually puts a stun counter on your opponent's land, so they don't get to use the land for the next turn. That's kind of a huge tempo swing. I'm interested to see if this actually makes it as a sideboard card, because otherwise I don't think you're really playing this in Commander unless you're like really have it out for everybody's lands. Next, we've got Stormscale Scion. This is just a sweet card. I just put it on here because it's friggin' cool. It's got Storm. It's a Storm Lord. All your other dragons get +1/+1. I mean, it's 6 mana. It's kind of insane. You barely do any storing when it comes to dragon decks. Dragon decks mostly just put 1 dragon in each turn, so I don't think this card is good at all. But if you're in a Storm style deck and you want this as like a payoff to just be random dragons all of a sudden, I think that's super hilarious and fun. And definitely, you know, I think you get more style points than Empty the Warrens or Grape Shot. So yeah, Stormscale Scion. Just a cool card. Next, I've got Tursa Lightshatter. This is kind of like the second mode of Fable, but it's on a hasty 3/3. That might be useful. Again, this is more of a standard thing than it is anything else. You know, or maybe just constructed formats. This could reach back to Modern, depending if there's something you really want to get out of your graveyard. I mean, exiling stuff at random. I have a soft spot for Capricious Hellkite. That card I bought a bunch of and it didn't go anywhere. So maybe I'll buy a bunch of this one and it also won't go anywhere. But I'm interested in it. I'm always interested in something hasty, aggro-y, something to give all my poor aggro decks a leg up here. Next, we've got Craterhoof Behemoth, the big boy. He's back in town, and yeah, that's pretty cool. You know, we're getting this not only in Standard, but we're getting it in Pioneer. For Commander, everyone knows it. You love it. It's basically a game ender. Despite it being kind of an awesome in the old school elf ball finisher, I just don't think it makes it these days. We've got good elves in both Standard and Pioneer. And, you know, with the finisher, maybe we get there, but the removal is just so efficient these days. I mean, we've got Split Up and Temporary Lockdown just eating you alive on 3 mana. Wrath of God on 4 mana. Sunfall still in Standard at 5 mana and just exiles your whole entire life. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough out there to be a go-wide creature deck. I would love for this to be a thing, but I just don't think it's going to get there. So, you know, Commander players, we get a nice little discount on Craterhoof if you didn't have one. Next, we've got Herd Heirloom. Two different H sounds in the word to make it really difficult for me to pronounce, but hey, you don't have to. Just say, I'm playing a 2-mana green mana rock, and people will just look at you funny. But I actually really like this one. I think it's really niche, the deck that you want this in. You're playing this in with cards that have at least 4 power, and a lot of them, and you're a creature-heavy deck, and you're going to shove this artifact in it. But it does more things. Typically, mana rocks are just ramping, just only ramps you. Like, drawing a ramping growth late game is kind of poo. You know, no one wants that on turn 7. But this one, if you've already developed a board state and you need to draw more cards, at least this one can let you do that. If you're getting in and you're doing damage and you're doing green mana stuff, which you probably are because you're playing green. I really like it. I think it's cool. I love mana rocks that do something fun or draw cards, and I love drawing cards. So, yeah, I think in the right deck, I think this can see some love. Nature's Rhythm is up next, and if you squint pretty hard, this looks like Finale of Devastation. A couple key differences here, though. One, Finale can get stuff out of your graveyard. This cannot. And Finale can also probably win the game if you just chunk a ton of mana into it. But in terms of just value out of the deck, I think this one actually takes it. They do the same effect. Basically, you just spend X mana and you get to put a creature of X mana or less onto the battlefield. But this one has Harmonize, which is like a Convoke-y flashback. So basically, if you get a big beater onto the battlefield, which is super difficult in green, I know, we all struggle with that, then you can just use the creature, tap it to reduce the X cost, and just pay 4. 4 mana, put basically whatever you want onto the battlefield is a pretty good rate. I think this is sweet. It's basically double the value. I love cards. I love flashbacks just in general, and this is a really interesting way to discount flashbacks. You know, the Harmonize thing. Yeah. If you like running tutors, if you're playing a lot of Court of Calling, Finale of Devastation, Green Sun Zenith, that kind of stuff, I recommend keeping an eye on that one, as it's just a little different from the other green tutors and might fit your deck's needs just a little better. Next up is Flamehold Grappler. When this enters, you just get to copy the next spell. It doesn't matter if it's an artifact, creature, or whatever. It doesn't matter. You just get a free copy for 3 mana. I think that's really cool. You can also blink this and it'll re-trigger, so you get the next copy again. You know, is this going to make it in standard? Boy, I hope so. That would be a sweet deck if you're just blinking this 3/3 to like get incremental value off just doubling up your spells. I think that's really cool. The Jeskai mana hurts this a lot. Casting this not only in standard is going to be very difficult, which is 3 color pips, but even in commander, like, is this really what you want to be doing? I don't know. I kind of want to be doing it. I think it's a cool card, and I'm interested to see if this actually gains any traction. After that, we've got Frostcliff Siege, and this either lets you draw a card or gives your creatures trample and haste. I think this is one of the best effects we've seen for this. The most recent kind of this effect was Enduring Curiosity, which was fantastic. It was 4 mana. It had flash. When it got killed, it came back. So I still think that one is probably just a little better. I'm happy to pay 1 extra mana for that. But in terms of cheapest rate for combat damage draw card, I think you can't really beat this, which is awesome. So drawing, this is a great thing. 3 mana, do the thing. Awesome. Get to draw a card. If your hand is stacked and you need to just win the game or push through damage, giving your creatures trample and haste and just a little extra power is pretty awesome. I really like how versatile this card is. 3 mana is a great rate for this. Going to be putting this in my Goro and Satoro deck. I'm going to be very pleased picking one of these up. Next, we've got Windcrag Siege, and probably just look at some more of the sieges. I didn't put them all on here, but I don't play all the colors, and if there's one that fits what your deck likes to do, there's probably some decent value in there for you. Anyways, Windcrag Siege, this basically lets you double trigger your attack triggers, which is pretty great, or it just makes a 1/1 token with lifelink and haste. Both of these are decent. That's not true. The Jeskai one is just okay. The tokens stick around, which is pretty nice, but it's just making 1 token a turn, so we got Urdbrass Forge, we've got Loyal Apprentice. There's plenty of ways to make a token that maybe doesn't stick around, but who cares? Not a lot of ways to double trigger your attack triggers. This is basically second Ishin in Ishin, so if you're playing Ishin, this one's good. But if you're playing other stuff that has, an attack trigger, yeah, you're probably going to want to pick this one up because there just aren't that many of them. Next, we've got Alcoven Encampment. This is probably not playable at all in Commander, and maybe not playable in Standard, but it's an interesting take on a manland. So I need you to picture this. Like, obviously, this raid is crap. If you're thinking about just making bodies, 4 mana because it's 3 mana, tap this, make 2/2s that die at the end of turn. That's not that good. But if you think of it in the sense of a man land where, you've got to activate the land and then go in and you attack and stuff, the biggest downside of man lands is that they do expose themselves to creature removal when they become creatures. This one doesn't. This one just makes 2 creatures. They do end up dying, but you just think of it as your man land turning back into a land at the end of turn. So if that is something you want in a standard deck, also it makes tokens. So if you've got like Caretaker's Talent or other things that care about tokens, that's pretty relevant. Other things like Fountain Port can sack the token with the sack triggers on the stack, so you can draw a card. So I think there's actually a decent amount of play for Dalkovan Encampment. I think it's a new and weird and interesting take on manlands that does get around one of the biggest downsides. It is pricey in terms of mana cost to activate, so maybe it's not that great, but I'm interested by it for sure. Next, we've got the blue land Mistrise Village that's got everyone's panties in a bundle. I get it. When a card says this, the next spell is uncounterable and it's in blue, it gets to some folks. 2 mana make the next spell uncounterable is obviously pretty solid if you're trying to force through a combo, whether you're in Commander or in a Legacy format. I think this is probably pretty playable, even if it's enters tap, because you're not playing mountains or forests. For the whole land cycle here in Tarkir, you don't actually need a mountain or a forest or whatever it specifies needing it to enter untapped. That's not a commander restriction or anything. There's no colored pips there, so you can throw this in a mono blue deck and you're fine. If you're a pretty combo heavy deck, or you've got something that you definitely always need to land on the battlefield, spending 2 mana probably isn't the worst idea to make sure it definitely happens, especially if you play in a pod that's got tons of blue mages in there trying to ruin your day. I would say, you probably want to play this. It'll be interesting to see the effects on Legacy, but this card just keeps climbing up and up, and I am also interested in it because it's a pretty strong line of text there. That's it for all the cards in the standard set. We're going to hop over to the commander set now. We've got a few more, and that'll wrap this up, and we'll be good to go. First up, we've got Aligned Heart. When you cast your second spell every turn, you get to put a counter on this and then make a 1/1 Prowess Monk token equal to the number of counters on it. So you can make tokens on your opponent's turn, you can make tokens on your own turn. It just keeps going up and up. You can proliferate that if you would like. I think this is just a solid value engine for Commander. This isn't some game-ending threat that once it hits the board, everyone's going to target you with, and I think that's the part I like about it the most. It's just kind of solid value for doing your game plan. If your deck revolves around doing multiple spells a turn, I think this is a solid include in that. It's going to kind of fly under the radar because it's just going to make a body at first, then 2 bodies of that. It's not really a big deal, but it will just add up and generate value. So if that is something you need in your double spelling deck, I would definitely look at Aligned Heart. After that, we've got another value piece in Ironwill Forger. This basically says if you control it and you control your commander, you can just give a target creature that's not legendary Myriad until end of turn. It triggers at combat, so both of them do have to survive until then, and it does target, so that one, there's a lot of moving parts, and it kind of just, worst comes to worst, you can just target itself and just have some crappy 3/3 beaters. But this is really good if you got like professional face breakers or something that you want to have connect, and then you'll get a bunch of them, or just some ETB triggers like, hey, I enter the battlefield, draw a card, or, even if you're just copying a Spirited Companion and going into the red zone with it, that lets you draw 2 more cards, which is pretty great. So I really like this on 4 mana. I think this is just a very, very fair card. I don't think anyone's going to be like, ooh, must kill this. So hopefully it sticks around and actually gets to generate you a decent amount of value. Next, we've got Tempest Technique. I think this is, again, it's just a cool storm card they included. It lets your Voltron Enchantress deck either go tall or lets it go wide. This lets you put an enchantment on each of your silly little enchantment dorks, or it lets you just stack it up really high if you're playing something like Light Paws. I think it's pretty versatile in that sense. 4 mana isn't super crazy in an Enchantress decks. You usually have your Sanctum Weavers. You can just tap it for a bazillion mana anyway, and then just put this out because you get to draw a bunch of cards. You do typically get to chain a lot of stuff together in enchantments. So yeah, this is actually pretty cool, and it's an interesting extra plan B to add to the deck. Next card up is Will of the Mardu. And a note for all the Will of the whatever cards, make sure you're putting these in decks that you're consistently running your commander out. You have good ways to get it out, whether it's cheating it in Yuriko style. It's just a low mana value commander. But if you're trying to play this with like an 8 mana value commander that you never put on the battlefield, all of these cards the rates are terrible, and you only get to do the one thing, so they're just really bad. So yeah, make sure you're only putting these in decks that you're consistently putting out and having your commander stick around. Will of the Mardu, I think this is pretty great. It's an instant speed, create a bunch of tokens, especially if your opponents are going off. You get to make a bunch of 1/1s equal to the amount of creatures they control. And the other mode is just deal damage to a creature equal to the number of creatures you control. So a little bit of removal and some body building. I like this, especially if you're going to double up with this. I think that's pretty nice. 3 mana is not super crazy for this, and you get to do it at instant speed, so you can potentially either blow someone out during an attack, or if you just want to make them in someone's end step, so you can have them all ready to go on your turn. I think for 3 mana, this is a solid card. Next up, we've got Deceptive Frostkite. This is a 2 mana clone, which is pretty sick. That's a great rate. I'm a huge fan of Mockingbird that came out in Blue Burl, which is kind of like a scaling mana value clone, but this one's just 2 mana. There are a bunch of restrictions on it though, but let's go through it. Basically, it has to copy one of your own creatures, which is kind of a bummer, and that creature has to have 4 or more power. But if you're playing stuff like dragons, like the set name, most of your creatures are going to be that big, so this is just a 2 mana copy of whatever big beater you've got already. That's pretty incredible. And notably, it retains flying, so if you're playing some dumb big guy, you can just give it flying, which is pretty cool. If you play Craterhoof, you can do Craterhoof +2, and then you've got double the hoof, and this hoof is in the air, and bing bang boom, everyone is twice as dead as they already were, but hey, you got style points, and yeah, I think this card's actually pretty cool. Next, we've got Will of the Temur. This is a 6 mana sorcery. This one may not be enough of a rate, but yeah, we're going to talk about it anyway. It lets you create a token of a target permanent, except it's a 4/4 dragon, so that costs about 3-4 mana, so that that makes sense in that rate. Having it be a flying 4/4 is solid, and having it be any permanent is pretty cool. Having a 4/4 Heuristic Study getting in there is probably one of the worst things you could do, and your opponents won't like you too much, but hey, you can do it. You can also ramp, I guess, if you want to. Don't do that. Don't make a 4/4 island. That's probably, if you're spending 6 mana to make a 4/4 flying island, you're probably not going to win the game. The other mode is target player draws cards equal to the greatest mana value on permanents you control. Notably, when you copy something, and when you have spells like this, the first thing if the first bullet point resolves first. That's just how the cards work. So you will create a token of something. If you pick something like the Great Henge, which has an insane mana value, you will then draw cards equal to it if it is your greatest mana value. I'd say probably if you have your commander out, it's probably less than 6 mana. So if you're casting this on 6 mana, so I would say maybe you've got a 4 mana commander, so at the least you're probably going to draw 4 cards off this, which is pretty solid. I don't love sorcery speed draw, but I figured I would include this one because there are some cute little things you could do with it, and yeah, I do think it's an interesting card at the very least. Next, we've got Afterlife from the Loam. This is a neat card. It's got Delve, so this card only costs 3 mana if you're playing it in the right deck. And it basically says reanimate 4 creatures for 3 mana. That's a great rate. Do not play this for value. Do not play this in decks where you are not milling folks. If you're just expecting this to come up casually, it was like, oh, people will have creatures in the graveyard, and this will be really good just as a cool value engine. It's not what's going to happen. No one's going to have any creatures in the graveyard when you draw this. You're going to be bummed holding this dead card in your hand until they finally sack their Steve or Solemn Simulacrum. You're going to be like, ooh, hooray, I spent 3 mana to get those crappy creatures back. Hooray, go me, I guess. No, play this in decks like Mothman, where you're milling both yourself and the opponent. Those kind of things where you're actually actively trying to fill graveyards because you need to delve your own spells out, and you actually need solid targets to be in the opponent's graveyard. Once you're doing those things, this is a crazy cool card, and you should absolutely run it. Next up, we got Will of the Abzan. For 4 mana, you get to Soul Shatter and drain your opponents for a little bit of life, and you get to reanimate something. Obviously, in Commander, we have things like Reanimate, but the standard typical going rate of reanimation is Zombify. That's 4 mana, so you get that just off the rip. That's the same rate for that. In Soul Shatter's a 3 mana cost, so, you know, you're paying a little more for Soul Shatter. So I think when you smush this together, you get Soul Shatter and you get the Reanimate, which is 1 mana. So this is actually super duper on rate if you control your commander. Within range, this is an interesting one. This is an enchantment that creates 2/1/1, so I like that it's just not a do nothing. So you do get at least a few bodies that come with it, which is really nice. And it says whenever you attack, each opponent loses life equal to the number of creatures attacking them. This is typically an effect that's relegated to red, and it's stuff like Raid Bombardment, where it's creatures that are 2 or less power. You know, they do 1 damage to everyone that they're attacking. So having this being in a different color and having it be even actually less restrictive. I know I think it's 1 more mana or maybe 2 more mana than those other effects, but it's in black and it's in a more relevant life gain or life drain color. So I think, yeah, this is actually one that you should definitely keep your eye on. This is a very interesting one with the color break and all that jazz. I do quite like within range. Next, we've got Infantry Shield. This is a sweet card. It gives a creature Menace, which is probably the worst, but still technically counts as evasion. And Mobilize X, where X is its power. So you throw this on a Ball Lightning, and you basically get in there. We have a Trample Haste Menace, and it makes 6/1/1s. They have to sacrifice themselves at the end step, but you can Skull Clamp them to your heart's desire. This is just a cool card. It lets you go wide while you're trying to go tall. Is it the best card ever? No, it's 3 mana, costs 2 to equip. But boy, is that just not neat. Plus, it looks pretty sweet too. Next up, we've got Parapet Thrasher. I think this is just a solid value-y dragon. We've gotten a bunch of 4 mana dragons that do make a lot of good value, and I think this is one of them. Obviously, getting all of these modes are great if you're attacking all of your opponents, but I think just being able to choose even one of these is solid. Being able to get a little impulse draw or just drain your opponents for 4 or even destroy a very pesky enchantment like a Panharmonicon or a Soul Ring. All of that is actually really relevant in Commander. I think this is a cool card if you're playing only if you're playing dragons, or I guess changelings. But only if you're playing those kind of decks, you know, very heavy into the creature type, should you run this. But when you do, I think you'll be happy with the value it provides you. After that, we've got Will of the Jeskai. It's a 4 mana wheel, and it's a May wheel, which is unfortunate, but hey, you know, it's okay. And it also gives all of your instants and sorceries flashback equal to their mana cost. That's pretty solid too. There are definitely specific decks that will like this. I wouldn't just jam this and everything. If you're just trying to wheel yourself or refill your hand, I like Brass's Tunnel Grinder, I like Valakut Awakening. I think those probably a little more. You can't actually force your opponents to wheel with this card. And if you're also looking to Spell Sling, I think this is a great add to Spell Slinger decks, and it is notably a sorcery, so it does count. It's not one of those cards that creates awkward tension where you're putting too many non-instants and sorceries into your Spellslinger deck. I think this is a cool addition. I quite like it. Speaking of more cards for your Spellslinger decks, we've got Zenith Festival. This card lets you impulse draw, where X equals the number of cards you get to impulse draw plus 2. It's not a bad rate. The harmonized rate is pretty solid as well. Being able to have flashback on just some extra draw is solid. So if you are looking for a little more extra card draw, that's not the best card draw, but still technically counts as card draw, take a look at Zenith Festival. Next, we got Will of the Sultai. This lets target player mill 3 cards and return all lands from the battlefield tapped. Or you can put X/1/1 counters on a creature where X is the number of lands you control. Obviously, this goes in a lands deck. If you're doing a lot of self-milling, this is great. If you've got a lot of lands on the battlefield, this is decent too. You know, nothing really to write home about, but I am just covering all the wills so you know they exist. And those are all the cards I have for you today. Those are the ones I'm really interested in. I'm not really interested in Mox Jasper because I don't play any dragon decks, but if you do like dragons, maybe that's what you keep an eye on, because yeah, it lets you play dragons a little quicker, but you need to have a dragon out and it costs 0 mana, so like, or you're putting it in a Changeling deck, who really knows? It's up to you to decide. The card's insanely valuable. Maybe you just want to play it in eggs because you want another egg to play for 0 mana. Who knows? I don't know. It's not something I'm really interested in. Obviously, I left out plenty of rares. Some of them are just draft rares, and who cares? Some of them are just cards I'm not interested in. If I left off cards that you are interested in or you think are worthwhile to keep an eye on, let me know in the comments. Which ones did I miss? Where did I go wrong? Let me know. If you like this video, I know so few people wanted me to do this, and I'm happy to do that kind of stuff, but please like the video if this is something you do like, and subscribe. We're going to be doing set EVs very, very soon. It's been a pretty hectic week for me, but I will try and get those out before release day this Friday, so stay tuned for that, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.